Welcome to Designing Healthcare That Cares, the show where we explore how to build healthcare systems where people and performance thrive. I'm your host, Dr. Laura Suttin, a physician, coach, and healthcare leader who believes that human flourishing and organizational excellence go hand in hand. Each week, I talk with leaders, change makers, and innovators about how to shift culture, lead with purpose, and tackle the root causes of burnout. Because when healthcare works for the people in it, everyone wins. Welcome to the Designing Healthcare That Cares podcast. I am really excited to have our guest on, Dr. Stephen Beeson. Dr. Beeson is the author of 2 national best-selling books, Practicing Excellence, A Physician's Manual to Exceptional Healthcare, and Engaging Physicians, A Manual to Physician Partnership. He's the former physician director of the Sharp Experience at Sharp Rees-Stealy Medical Group in San Diego. He is the founder of Practicing Excellence. While he was at Sharp Rees-Stealy, the group was recognized with multiple awards, including the Malcolm Baldrige Quality Award, in recognition as one of the top performing medical groups in the state. He founded Practicing Excellence in 2013 to tap into the power of systemic skill development to improve healthcare at both an organizational and the national level. Currently, Dr. Beeson serves as a national thought leader, speaker, and author in the field of human development, mapping to healthcare challenges and priorities. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, so good to have you. So how did you get started? Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get to where you are right now? Such a unique path.
I know, isn't it? It's like I listen to it and I go, God, is that my life? I guess it is. You know, the intention for many of us that are physicians is to go through the training program and get board certified and see patients and diagnose and treat conditions to advance the wellness of the person in front of us. And that was my intention for my life. And I was introduced to the prospect of a broader influence of beyond just the exam room when I became the medical director of this improvement effort that we call the Sharp Experience at Sharp Healthcare in San Diego, where I was challenged by our board and our medical director to say, you know, we want to advance physician contribution and physician participation and engagement in our journey, realizing that physician participation, advocacy, example modeling, and signals that we send to our teams have a strong influence whether other people join the movement of becoming better in a particular endeavor. And so I became really interested in how do we facilitate physician contribution to organizational improvement in a way that not only are we contributory by doing things that advance the performance of the healthcare system, but also doing work in a way that is enriching and drives contentment in the clinical life. So it's this contribution and contentment pursuit that I was hoping to be able to find. And so after I was appointed to the medical director of the Sharp Experience, we began to apply this human development model on how do we better connect with patients? How do we better collaborate with our colleagues? How do we better lead our systems? And what I found was that the process of learning and applying skills could render incredible improvements in terms of how it is that we were showing up in the metrics that we're able to achieve, but also what it was like for the clinicians to become better teammates, to become better for the patients that we served, better as team leaders. And over the course of time, we were able to render some pretty extraordinary quantitative improvements. And what I hope to see as, you know, clinicians saying this is a way better place now for us and for me.
Yeah.
So I became really interested as a champion and advocate for human development to change behaviors, to drive organizational outcomes.
Yeah, that's so cool. I'm curious, just from the beginning. So like we said before we hit record, and we'd messaged before that I heard you speak at a workshop when I was a new leader for a health system. This was 15 years ago now. And I was new to leadership and new to this massive healthcare landscape. I'd really just come from private practice, a small private practice. At the same time, I wasn't hearing things like patient experience or clinician experience. Those terms weren't part of the vernacular at the time. And so this was really trailblazing. And so I'm curious, was this something that where you saw a gap and you stepped up to fill that need? Did somebody tap you on the shoulder like happens to a lot of us and say, hey, we need you to run this? How did all of that get started?
Well, I got to tell you that a lot of my discoveries have been by accident, and many of them have been quite personal. And let me give you an example. When I was first challenged with a medical group who sat in the sixth percentile for patient experience, and the challenge was make this better and facilitate physician participation for this. That was the board level directive without any specific guidance outside of that. And the first thing I did was I began to interview patients. And I interviewed about 50 patients throughout the course of clinical encounters to identify what is it that patients define as great care. Despite widely diverse patients with many different diagnoses and demographics and ages, there were very, very consistent themes in terms of how patients defined a great clinician and great care. They wanted to be heard. They wanted to be known. They wanted to be cared about. They wanted to have confidence in the care that they were receiving. Very simple, clear, consistent themes for what patients wanted. So that became the destination to say, this is how patients define great care. Then I combed through the literature to say, what are the things based upon evidence that we could do in the exam room so patients walk out and say, I was definitely heard. I was definitely cared about, and I'm really confident in the care that I'm receiving. And each of those three domains have a set of behaviors based upon evidence that allow that sentiment to emerge. And before I started coaching, training, and developing any clinician, I really began with myself to say, what are the behaviors that I can learn that I can bring into the exam room that allows the patient to walk out and say, that was the best care I've ever received? And I remember the very first skill that I learned was learning about the person behind the diagnosis. And it came from a small editorial article in a clinical journal. And I read the article and I said, that's a clinician skill. That's a clinician behavior that we can bring into the exam room. So I'm going to learn that and I'm going to try it and apply it. And that singular skill changed everything for me and what it was like to be a clinician. I went from titrating hemoglobin A1Cs to really getting to know and partnering and understanding what mattered to patients, who they were, the context of their lives, what health was to them, what they wanted to achieve, what they were afraid of. And it was deeply enriching for me to go from a tactician and almost a clinical mechanic to an impact creator. And what I found was I was not only able to significantly improve how patients were seeing me, I was able to achieve the 99th percentile for patient experience for 10 straight years using super simple techniques in the exam room. But more importantly, what it was like for me to be a clinician that showed up like that, where the patients that I touched and how I interacted with them, where patients felt heard and valued and in the know and confident in the care that they were receiving, was beneficial for them, but even more enriching for me. And what I found with my colleagues as I began to roll out this idea of what kind of clinician do we want to be? What kind of experience do we want to create? And what are the evidence-derived behaviors we can use to be able to create that sentiment? We were having more impact on us as clinicians than even patients. And we were able to take patient experience from the 6th percentile to the 93rd percentile with the same clinicians deploying evidence-based behaviors that were deeply enriching for us. It was a discovery by accident that purposeful, impactful, meaningful work in the exam room with patients was beneficial to the clinician. And there's now 57 studies that demonstrate the
Right.
same thing, that the bond between patient and clinician, which can be forged by how we show up by learned and applied behaviors, is a very powerful burnout countermeasure.
Yeah. I can't underscore that enough. The power of what you're talking about, the power of that connection in the exam room and how impactful it is, not just for the patient, but for the clinician. And like you said, since your work started, there's numerous studies showing this correlation. And what I love about your work and what you're describing is you said it's evidence based and it's skill building. So I think back to when my organization was on this journey towards looking at patient experience and how do we measure it? How do we impact it? And we got a lot of pushback. And I think it was because I don't think we approached it in the way that was palatable to the clinicians at the time. I
Right.
feel like we approached it, and I see this now, of course, hindsight's 2020. I think we approached it from the standpoint of you're not doing enough for the patient and from the deficit standpoint rather than,
Right.
hey, this is a skill that you can learn, just like you can learn
Right.
how to manage DKA in the ICU. That's a skill. You can learn how to intubate a patient. That's
Right.
a skill. This is also a skill. And we don't get taught this, right? We don't come out of college or medical school or residency knowing this inherently. How do we create these skills using the evidence, using what we know in order to make that impact? So I just want to really highlight what you're saying there.
The other thing that's really interesting is that we can provision through a skill building approach evidence-based behaviors that we know work. But I think we also have to think about what are the conditions that create clinician willingness to participate. Meaning, we can't just say, go express empathy to patients,
Right.
allow them to speak without interruption. That's like telling patients to go exercise 150 minutes per week in the yellow or orange. So provisioning simple skills as a mechanism of human behavioral change is not always reliable. What are the key things that drive consistent behavioral change are two things. One is the forging of an identity for what kind of clinician do you want to be in this life. It's what I ask every clinician as I'm doing a coaching session. I'll ask them, tell me the kind of clinician you want to be. And having asked almost 1,000 individual clinicians that particular question, the answers are remarkably consistent. I want to be a trusted healer that advances the wellness of the patients that I care for. I want to be proud of who I am and how I show up. I want to be a light in the world. I want to impact my colleagues and my team in a positive way where I can see the benefits of the actions that I take. And so once they forge that identity, this is the kind of clinician that I want to be, then the behaviors can emerge from that. And the development pathway is simple micro behaviors that we can take in the exam room with patients where they begin to see a definitive benefit from it. For example, one of the simple skills that we provision to clinicians is to ask patients during the course of a clinical interview, what about all that you're going through right now worries you the most? It's a really simple question to ask. And having shadowed a lot of clinicians and watched a lot of game film in terms of how it is that we show up and asking patients, have you ever been asked that question before? And almost categorically, it's no.
Yeah.
And then when clinicians learn that question and ask that question and are able to identify and see what the patients are afraid of and what they're worried about, it's a career game changer in terms of our ability to forge a really deep, meaningful, authentic relationship with patients. And so clinicians will say, gosh, I learned that question. I learned that skill. I applied it in the exam room and I saw a benefit from it. And when they see a benefit from it, number one, they continue to do it. And number two, they become advocates and champions in the family medicine meeting, in the huddle with their colleagues about, hey, I tried this skill and let me tell you what happened when. And that's the sharing of impact of trying an evidence-based skill is how we create diffusion of those behaviors across a clinical enterprise. It's very much what we did at Sharp Healthcare. We did storytelling of the things we were doing and the impact of the application of skill development. Over the course of time, it changed who we were and how we were showing up and having consistent application of these evidence-based behaviors that could drive a consistent experience of patients. And then we began to apply this skill development, not only in terms of how it is that we were interacting with patients in the registry of skills that we know work, but also how do we become better teammates for each other and all the skills that make for being an amazing teammate. We can learn that. We can apply that as well. And again, it's the learning and the applying of a skill that allows me the benefit of becoming a better teammate and raising the spirit of esprit de corps, there for each other, collaboration, partnership, friendship within and across teams. That's an equally important set of behaviors that we employ to advance vitality, well-being, collaboration, sense of team, purpose bigger than us. All those things can be derived through this idea of a continuous human development approach.
Yeah. And we know how impactful those relationships and that connection and that glue is for all of us as humans and the impact that it has on our overall health and mental, physical, all of that. I want to ask you because you alluded to something at the beginning about creating the ecosystem for our clinicians to be successful. Just like we wouldn't necessarily go and tell a patient to exercise 150 minutes in the yellow zone. That's not really meeting them where they are. That might be the ultimate goal, but it's not meeting them where they are or addressing their barriers. And so, how do you help the clinicians address the barriers that they're facing and knowing that barriers to empathy, you know, if they time or burnout or administrative burden, I mean, all these things that our clinicians are
Right.
facing, how do you work with clinicians and with organizations to remove
Yeah.
some of those barriers?
Yeah. It's really important that we lead and engage clinicians so they feel as a clinical body, my voice is heard. I feel that there's somebody advocating for the quality of my life. There's action being taken to deburden the things that are overwhelming for me. I feel valued. I feel appreciated. I matter and I count here. And that disposition is very much related to how the organization is being led. And so when people say, how do you get physicians to participate and deploy discretionary effort to achieve organizational goals? One of the dependencies for that is a highly effectively and consistently led organization, meaning the composite of leadership behaviors. We've identified 12 leadership behaviors. When we deploy them from frontline manager to senior leader, of self-awareness, growth mindset, emotional intelligence, team intelligence, gratitude, authenticity, trust, communication, candor. There's these composite of leader capabilities that when we deploy this, that we can advance clinicians' willingness to participate in the journey. Because those that are effectively led will say, my voice is heard. I feel valued. I feel appreciated. I feel seen. I matter here. And somebody's got my back and leaders care about me here. And I see and have a voice in where we're going and what we're doing. And so I always characterize physician engagement and physician willingness to participate by the cues and the signals they get from their leadership teams.
Yeah.
And so leadership development to advance the skills and capabilities and behaviors of your leadership team is one of the most powerful and necessary interventions to raise clinician willingness to participate in a journey to help make the organization better. In addition to this idea and this notion of team collaboration, when clinicians feel like we are there for each other, we help each other, we support each other, we're in this together, and we're serving a purpose that I really believe in, and we lift each other up when we're struggling, that cultural trait, which can be developed through a distinct human development pathway, raises the probability of discretionary effort to help achieve an organizational goal. So you can't mandate and dictate and tell clinicians to go do something. Again, it works as well as telling patients to go lose weight or to go exercise. We have to set conditions of highly effective leadership. We have to set conditions of highly collaborative teams, and we have to provision patient connectivity skills that render benefit to them that are consistent with the kind of clinician they want to be and become.
Yeah.
And that is a very, very high level summary for how it is that we got all the clinicians to participate as we improved our cultural proxies of patient experience, team collaboration, and physician engagement and physician retention within the Sharp Rees-Stealy Medical Group.
Yeah. It's so important. It makes me think of how clinicians are highly dedicated professionals. They'll work hard for a cause and for a leader that has their back and believes in
Yeah.
them and wants the best for them. And so when that leadership is in place, then they're able to really get so much more from their clinicians. Just like you said, asking for that discretionary effort, there has to be a sense of, I have a say in this, my voice is heard.
Yeah, it is. And if you look at the engagement data for physicians and non-physicians, probably about 60% of the entire engagement quotient is impacted by what are the signals and cues and behaviors and consistency of leadership. And leadership more at the front line, meaning the leadership that is immediately proximal to me. Do they ask me for my input? Do they recognize and appreciate me for who I am and what I'm doing? And am I empowered to participate in solutions for challenges that are close to me? Is there definitive actions I see that allow me to have a reduction of the burden that I feel? And again, we can't eliminate all burdens, but the signals of, gosh, you've brought in ambient listening because your time and your balance in doing what you do best is going to be critical. And there's good evidence that ambient listening tools, can you help us do some discovery on that and help test that, because your life matters. When clinicians are recipients of that, we want to engage in an effort to make this better for the patients that we take care of. And you're a critical part of this. Clinicians who are recipients of those kind of cues from leaders say, God, yeah, of course, I'll do what I can to help and support, because all the other signals have signaled to me that I matter here, that I count here, I'm important here, I'm significant here. And those cues and that readiness and that willingness can be optimized and manifested by how the organization is being led. And I would also contend that consistency and cohesion and reliability of leadership is also, it's really required to develop leaders on evidence-based leadership skills that can engage our people. Just like building this spirit of there for each other and collaboration, it also requires us to learn the skills of being a great teammate, just like building the skills of being amazing for the patients that we take care of. So this idea and this notion of continuous human capability improvement to lead, to collaborate, to connect with patients, to me, and what I think the literature supports now, is a cultural trait of high-performing organization, invest in their people to raise their capacity to create results. And it's really where I've gone from seeing one patient at a time and impacting one patient at a time to building technology and building a company that allows continuous human development to raise capabilities to render care that is better for patients, better for organizations. But I think most importantly, who doesn't want to be a part of an organization that is really effectively led, that is really deeply collaborative with each other and build this sense of team and in this together, to help each other, support each other, lift each other, and is authentically impacting the lives of patients, where we're deploying behaviors where patients are saying, God, you guys are the best, and everybody I love and care about has got to come here for the care. It's still hard work being in medicine, but when we're in a place that's amazing for patients, amazing for each other, and really well led, I think we give ourselves a fighting chance in what is a very, very tough healthcare environment.
Yeah, like you said, there's so much going on already. Then let's make it really the best place to work and where we all support each other. And I love that you're drawing this comparison between the clinician and the patient, and the clinician asking the patient, but what worries you the most, and how that doesn't take much time or energy. On the same token, the leader who goes to the clinician and says, what can I do to serve you better? What is one thing I can do to make your life easier? What is one thing that would make you want to leave within the next year? And just that interaction and that human connection and treating them like they matter can be so impactful for the clinician and the leader. And then it has downstream impacts on the patient.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So there's this remarkable consistency of human to human micro interactions
Yes.
that we have access to, despite what the big, beautiful bill or CMS, all the other dumpster fire activities that are occurring in American healthcare. We get to pick and choose how we're showing up for our patients, how we're showing up for our teammates, and how it is that we're leading. We have dominion over that. And that's really empowering and encouraging. And again, this continuous development approach allows those effective, impactful, purposeful behaviors to really begin to shape the culture and prompt the clinicians and every team member to say, gosh, yeah, we work super hard, but I love my crew. And I love how I feel like I matter, and super proud of who we are for our patients. And yeah, I'm sticking around,
Yeah.
you know, and you start retaining one clinician through a more effectively led, more collaborative, more authentic patient-centered movement and culture. You've paid for your training and development for your entire system for 4 years. So anyway, I'm just a fierce advocate for unleashing the capabilities of your people to bring goodness in healthcare, because I think it's super sad and tragic that half of all clinicians and more than half of all nurses are saying, not awesome.
Yeah.
This beautiful healing profession where we can impact the lives of the patients that we take care of, societally respected for the most part, and a really purposeful line of work, and a dignified way of being in life, is that over half are saying it's not good for me. I find that totally unacceptable.
Yeah, it's tragic. And I love how you described that you're unleashing the capabilities. So I don't see that as like, let's add something new. I mean, yes, there are skills and you're teaching, but it's really uncovering the skills and the wisdom that, just like in coaching, that we already know is there. But how do we bring that up? How do we take away the things that are getting in our way?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't ever advance a skill for a clinician unless I feel authentically and there's good evidence that it will be beneficial to them. One of the things that I recently coached was, for example, how to manage a patient demanding antibiotics for a viral illness. So we have two choices. We can cave and do the clinically inappropriate thing and click for a Z-Pack, or we battle that
Right.
and we confront the patient and try to stand up for the right clinical thing. But what about the skill of negotiating with patients so they come out, number one, doing the right thing clinically, but they feel seen, valued, and heard and respect and in the know regarding the best and right way to advance their wellness.
Yeah.
I mean, I never took the course of managing a patient demanding an antibiotic for viral illness, but the provisioning of simple steps to do that, and clinicians say, oh my God, I wish I would have learned that one 10 years ago. That was so much better.
Yeah.
And so the clinicians are able to learn things that allow them to be more effective in their work, where they feel the immediate dividend for a pebble in their shoe.
Yeah.
And it is where I see the value in this, is that this helps me become better and more consistent with the kind of clinician I want to become.
Yes. Yeah. Tell me about the practicing excellence. What led to that choice of words and where that came from?
Well, the name Practicing Excellence is obviously my first book, because excellence is a way of being that renders the best possible impact in the world. And practicing is, we're never done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at elite athletes or Olympians or musicians or chefs or whatever endeavor, they don't say, I am done growing. The mastery journey is something that is a continuous process of raising our capabilities in a way that we can accomplish, achieve, contribute, and move forward in a way that's enriching for us. So the mastery journey, Daniel Pink's work, has been shown to be a driver of human contentment. So the idea of getting better on things that we care about is a driver of the human experience, number one. And number two, we found through this human development strategy at Sharp that we were able to really change behavior in a way that was enriching for patients and care team members. And we had achieved the 95th percentile in physician engagement, 80% reduction in physician turnover and patient experience from bottom decile to top decile. But it was really hard to scale, really hard to sustain, and really hard to map a skill development activity to a particular organizational goal. And so sitting in a Starbucks around 2013, after grinding out this skill development pathway, I thought to myself, human development is a powerful driver of healthcare improvement in a way that enriches clinicians, organizations, and patients. Super hard to do, super hard to scale, super hard to sustain. Might we use technology to create scale, sustainability, and even personalized human development in a way that could map and understand the organizational intention? Because anybody writing a check to develop their people has to know that their development is going to render an improvement on a thing that the executive team and the board wants to achieve in your organizational dashboard. So the ability to align development to an organizational goal, to be able to personalize it. So it's personalized for role, challenges, and I want to know how to manage the patient demanding unnecessary care. And I need to know that answer to that right now while I'm working.
Right.
And so it's personalized for you, your role, and what matters to you, your responsibilities, your accountabilities, and even your data and what patients are saying about you. So we can guide your development according to how you're showing up. And the ability, third, is to scale it to everybody. though cohorts and things like leadership development are great, classrooms are great, grand rounds are great, but we forget 90 to 95% of everything that we learn within a week. Learning is not episodic, it is continuous. And it's not about learning, it is about behavior change and behavioral guidance. So we built a behavioral guidance system using AI-driven skill development that care team and leaders can use to advance the abilities of their people that are mapped to specific organizational goals. And that has become practicing excellence. It's a human enablement system, if you will, and to raise the capabilities. And the capabilities are specific to what the organization wants to achieve. And AI has been a game changer in terms of the ability of technology to advance the capacity of people. And so that's where I've dedicated my life now, in addition to my family and taking care of myself and trying to be a positive impact in the community. And so, yeah, practicing excellence is where I've put my stake in the ground to put a dent in the universe, tiny little dent, nothing like Steve Jobs, but a tiny little dent in trying to make healthcare better for care teams, organizations, patients, and communities.
Yeah. It's such a hopeful conversation. And I love everything that you said, but just going back to regardless of what's going on in healthcare in any part of life, we have agency in how we interact with patients, with each other, with our teams, with our families. So that gives me a lot of hope for the future and hope for our healthcare community. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
I really appreciate your work, Laura. And I think we can close with, there's a great quote from George Eliot that I'm probably going to goof up, but it says, the greatest path to human growth is choice. And we get to choose who we are in this life. And I think this idea of advancing skills through continuous development is just fertilizer for the humanity of a really purposeful life, where we can look back on it and say, man, I see the garden that grew as a result of how I showed up for myself and my community, my patients, my teammates, my family, my friends. And I think that's something, despite all the healthcare challenges, we have accessibility to. And I'm hoping listeners would say, God, right, we got to help and support our people become their very, very best versions of themselves, because that's a really powerful driver of healthcare improvement that we have access to.
Yeah, I love that. So powerful. Well, where can our listeners find you if they want to learn more about you and practicing excellence?
Yeah, you can just search Practicing Excellence and you'll see our case studies and how to get hold of us. But we would love to chat and hear your story about unleashing the capabilities of your people.
Thank you so much for being here. So wonderful to talk to you.
Thanks, Laura.
Before you go, let me share a quick story about when I was new as a physician leader. I remember very clearly walking into a boardroom with a meeting with fellow executives, and I felt like a massive imposter. I told myself, I'm not smart enough to be here. I don't know enough about this topic. I'm not able to contribute in the way that I wish I could. I was a physician. I had an MBA. I had other leadership skills. And here I was just doubting myself incredibly. And it held me back. It really kept me from contributing to my team and to the overall organization. It took me years to develop the confidence that I needed in order to be successful in that role. And I eventually learned that my imposter syndrome wasn't about my lack of competence or my lack of skill or knowledge. I hadn't had the training that I needed in order to be successful. I've seen this over and over in my years of coaching clinician leaders, that we're asked to be in leadership positions, but we haven't been given the tools and the trainings. Maybe we've gotten some leadership training, but it's rather generic and it's not meant for us. That's why I created the Clinician Leadership Compass course. This course is designed specifically for physicians, nurse practitioners, and physician associates who are in leadership positions and who are struggling with overwhelm, burnout, imposter syndrome, isolation. I created this course just for you. This course includes real coaching sessions with real clinician leaders, and you'll be able to take away practical tools that you can use immediately to reduce your overwhelm and burnout. And CME is included as well. The course is now open, and when you complete it, you'll earn up to 10 AMA PRA Category 1 CME credits and the Certified Clinician Leader designation. I would love for you to be there. Go to www.thepurposefulmd.com/courses to enroll today, and I can't wait to see you inside. Thanks for listening to Designing Healthcare That Cares. If today's conversation gave you a new idea or inspired you to see things differently, share this episode with a colleague and keep the conversation going. And if you're ready to take the next step in building a thriving healthcare culture, you can find resources and ways to connect with me at drlaurasuttin.com. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not medical advice, and it should not replace care from a qualified healthcare provider. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified professional for any medical questions or decisions.